Today we're going to turn this into this. Hey, welcome back to At the Table and our summer series, the last session of that series. Today we're going to be focusing on a healthy salad that's really light, really refreshing, and definitely would be a great lunch or dinner option for you. This salad recipe I actually found from a food blogger. Her name's Lily Eats and Tells. If you want to check out her recipes, go online. But I found this recipe and it really just used a lot of produce that is available right now. So I just thought it would be a really great recipe for the summertime. And it has so many pretty colors in it. So we talk about eating the colors of the rainbow. Different colors of fruits and vegetables have different vitamins and nutrients to our body. So that is the purpose of us eating something like a salad that has a lot of different colors. We want to try to get all of the colors of the rainbow in during a week's period. So you think about blueberries or apples. We've got peaches here. So thinking about that and having a different fruit or a different vegetable every day to achieve that. And this knocks it out with one meal. So we're gonna start off with our spring mix and spinach. So I just combine the two. The recipe calls for just spring mix. I use a whole bag of spring mix, and then I also mix in about half a bag of fresh spinach as well. I'm a spinach girl, so that's typically what I gravitate towards, so I'd rather have a little bit of extra spinach in there. So I go ahead and start off by just chopping up those greens even more finely. Now, if you have a garden at home and you're doing any type of lettuce or growing any type of greens at home, you can use whatever you have on hand. This doesn't have to necessarily be, made the same way that we're doing it today, made to a T. You modify it to fit what you have and what you enjoy. So I just like to cut it up into smaller pieces because it just goes a little bit further. I also find that my family eats it better when I have it in smaller pieces. So the more you chop it up, just seems like the further it goes. And that looks pretty good. You can use any old kitchen shears for this. You could chop this, on your cutting board. I find this is the easiest. This is also a great task if you have little ones at home and you're trying to keep them occupied right now and give them something to do. So I'll just get a little bit of that excess, and that looks pretty good. We've got those greens into small bits. So we're gonna set that to the side. Next thing we have is some fresh basil here. Now, you just wanna use about a handful of that, and fresh herbs are definitely in season right now. They are definitely available, very, very accessible at the moment, and they completely change the way a salad tastes. So I highly recommend using those fresh herbs in your salad. So if you have a big herb garden or even a little one, I have a very small one that I keep on my front porch in the shade in just small little containers. I can use that every day, throw a couple herbs into whatever I'm making. So we're just gonna chop these up. So I just kind of stack them and then slowly chop them. You could also throw it in there, and as you're cutting it up a little bit further, it would chop the basil as well. We're just gonna sprinkle that in, and it smells so good already. Now the recipe also calls for a handful of mint. I didn't have any mint on hand, and I'm also not a big mint person. I do think in this salad it would be really good, and it would kind of be a little bit more hidden. Found some more basil, we'll chop that up too. It would be a little bit more hidden in this salad, so by all means, if you have mint accessible, go for it, add that to it. it was just not something that I had on hand. So we've got our greens, all of that chopped up and ready to go. We're gonna move on to some of our vegetables. We're gonna add some corn, cucumber, we've got peach. You can make this salad any time of year, but if you don't have fresh peaches available during a certain time of year, you could do apples. You could really do anything that you enjoy fruit-wise. And then we're gonna use a little bit of an orange bell pepper. You could use yellow or red, and we've got those small grape tomatoes. So we will see you back in just a second to get to those vegetables.
You're out for an evening on the town. Finally a chance to relax and forget that you left your front door completely unlocked. Fortunately, you just installed a security system from Star Communications. With just your cell phone, you can check on your house, lock it down, light it up, and get back to relaxing.
You forgot to put Buster in his crate.
Unfortunately, we can't help with that. Security and automation from Star Communications. Call today to find out more.
Welcome back. We've got our summer salad coming together nicely. So we're gonna move on to our vegetables. I have some fresh corn here that I actually grilled earlier this week to just have available for my family. And this is really good with fresh grilled corn. If you don't have that, so if it's winter and you decided to make this recipe, I have used frozen corn that you just heat up in the microwave, let it cool down before you actually add it to the salad. I prefer frozen personally to canned just because it has more of that fresh flavor. Your frozen vegetables are going to be flash frozen, so they're picked right at their peak and then they're flash frozen immediately. So versus canned, you're going to lose a little bit of those nutrients when you can foods. Frozen, it's frozen right when it has the most nutrients. So to me, it has a little bit of a better flavor. So we're just gonna cut this up, and you can see some of my grill marks on there too. And I'm gonna use this whole thing of corn. So just working my way down. And you have to be very careful here. Just make sure that you have full control over that cob, and as you go down, just slowly work your way in that saw motion. Ideally, you would have a very, very sharp knife that this wouldn't be very difficult for you to do with that. So that looks pretty good. Might have a few pieces at the bottom, but that's all right. And we're just gonna dump all of that right in there. I might break some of these pieces up just a little bit. We're just gonna dump that into our bowl. And that gives it that pretty yellow. All right. Another benefit to using corn, corn is actually more of a grain than it is considered more of a vegetable. So a lot of the times the way that corn is processed in our body, it's a little bit more metabolized as a grain. So a lot of times we consider corn as a whole grain, so thinking of popcorn, thinking of a corn muffin or corn tortillas, those are all gonna fall into your grains category. So I kind of would count that here as our grain for our dish. So we've got all of our vegetables, and then we're also getting a grain here. So this will be a full, it'll fit all of those areas of our My Plate. And when we think of our My Plate, we think of half of that plate being fruits and vegetables, which this is more than half, definitely will be fruits and vegetables. And then a quarter will be protein, and a quarter will be your whole grains, ideally. So we're gonna move on. Our next vegetable is cucumber, and I've already used half of this, so if you have any small cucumbers, this is perfect. Use about 2 of those small cucumbers, or use half of a large cucumber. And you know, we're gonna cut off that other end because we're not gonna use that, but I'm just gonna cut these into kind of those coins. And you wanna move nice and slow. Another way you could do this is to cut it in half and go that way. There's plenty of options in ways that you can chop this up. We're going to actually dice this up. So everything in this salad is in small little bite-sized pieces. So you get a little bit of everything in every bite, which to me is the way to go in terms of salads. And then we are gonna just cut these into even smaller pieces. Let's give myself some room. So just stack a few, and then watching those fingers, being very careful. We'll stack a few more. So the key to this is making sure that we have that tip of the knife on the board, and we are just working our way down, kind of in a rocking motion. And almost done. This gives us that the crunch, kind of that freshness, and it just really helps to tie together this whole salad recipe. All right, so if you want to make this even smaller, you could go back through just 1 or 2 times with the knife just to chop. Again, I like it in really small pieces, just so then it can stretch a little bit further. You get a little bit in every single bite. And even your non-cucumber lovers will like it in this recipe because you don't really taste it. Again, it's kind of hidden. It's smaller pieces. It's not like they're getting this big giant piece of cucumber. All right, so we'll throw that in there. Next thing we're gonna add is our tomatoes. So I've got some of those sweet tomatoes here. I prefer the angel sweet, but they are a little bit more expensive in the grocery store compared to just your traditional cherry or grape tomatoes. So you definitely can buy whatever works in your budget. I cut these into 4. You could cut this into even smaller pieces if you wanted to. You need about 6 to 7 of these cherry tomatoes. And tomatoes are definitely one of those things that are available pretty easily during the summertime. If you don't have a tomato plant at home, I definitely encourage you to try to grow one. It will really open your eyes to some of the difficulties our farmers have when they are growing, and kind of the process of why they do the things they do when they are farming. Because I know at my house we get bugs that try to attack my tomato plants. I'll find worms on them. And so, I start having to think of ways that I can reduce that so that my produce won't be completely taken away by all of those insects and whatnot. So we'll give it just another minute. We'll come back and we'll finish up the rest of these vegetables.
Sweetie, will you turn that down, please?
Keep life exciting, even when it's not. Watch TV everywhere from Star Communications.
All right, so we're gonna actually move on to our salmon. I decided to throw some salmon on the grill as well because this has just been something I've been enjoying lately. You can actually buy salmon fresh or frozen, whatever is your preference. And then in terms of wild caught or farm raised, there's gonna be pros and cons of either one. So, there's not one benefit to one over the other. In the ocean, it could depend on where it's being caught at as to what the fish have contained. And then in farm raised, it could depend on the farm. So it could really go either way. They're both great options. The best thing is for you to educate yourself in terms of resources of where your fish are coming from. So we're gonna throw those onto the grill. And I do have my salmon marinated. And first thing is you wanna always make sure that you have the skin side down. So actually, I forgot, I'm gonna spray my pan really quick. So I've got just some cooking spray here. We're just gonna spray that to keep it from sticking too bad. And we'll throw that on. So skin side always goes down. We got this big piece. This was a fresh salmon, and I cut it in half because it was so large. So skin side always goes down. That smaller skinny piece is gonna cook a little bit faster. We'll have to pull that off early. The other one's much thicker. We'll leave this for about 8 minutes or so, pulling that smaller piece off maybe around 6 minutes. So we'll close that up. I did marinate the salmon. If you're doing any type of fish, you wanna only marinate for about 30 minutes. Something like this could go an hour, so that thicker fish, your fatty fish like salmon, could possibly be marinated for about an hour, but you don't want to extend that marinate time too long because fish is very fragile and it can start to fall apart before it's even cooked. So you don't want it to be gross, falling apart already, kind of gooey. You want to make sure that you still have really good fresh piece of fish. So marinated this about 30 minutes, and I always do soy sauce, and I use that reduced sodium soy sauce, and then I do a little bit of herbs. So I always add ground ginger because I just love ginger on fish, and then I did a little bit of rosemary and some Italian seasoning, just whatever I had in my cabinet over here. I like to use a seasoning blend at home. That's usually my go-to with any type of fish. But I didn't have that here today, so that's all right. So you just want to marinate that for about 30 minutes and it'll be good to go. And whatever you choose to marinate it in is up to you. I prefer to do it in a plastic baggie just because it's easier for me, but you could absolutely do it in a bowl or a plate as well if that works better. So we're going to finish up our vegetables while that stuff is cooking. So the next thing we have, you want to use about 1/2 of a bell pepper. This one I actually cut the top and the bottom off for another recipe. So we're gonna use the remaining bit of this for our salad. So anytime you are cutting a bell pepper, you cut off the top, cut off the bottom, and then that way you're able to use that entire bell pepper. So then you wanna cut a little slit inside, and then you're just gonna slowly roll that out until you can get those seeds out, just like that. And you can throw those in the ground, throw them in your compost, save them for later, whatever you decide. Then usually I just cut it long ways, working my knife down, and I'll do both sides. And then we're gonna cut it the opposite direction as well. Again, working for those, looking for those smaller pieces so that we don't have like big chunks of bell pepper in our bites either. Salmon is already smelling good. And this really gives you that nice crunch that you want in a salad. Same thing as your cucumber will give you that nice crunch as well. Something satisfying about a little bit of crunch in your salad when you have that. All right, so throw that in. Last piece is gonna be our peach. So remember, if you don't have any peaches on hand, if it's not the right season for peaches, you can absolutely use apples or anything else. Just make sure you're discarding any bad pieces. So if you find some bad pieces as you go, set those to the side. We'll trash those or compost them for later. And I just kind of work my way around the pit of the peach. And if I find any bruising, I just cut it off. You can actually just slowly peel that off and throw that pit away and use the rest of it. So then we're just gonna cut this into small pieces. The peach part of this really gives it that freshness, that sweetness ties in there. This and the corn are really what contributes the sweetness to this salad recipe. And it's just so good to me. I mean, I'm not a huge salad person. Don't really like salad actually. but this has been something I have been making every single week, and I absolutely love it. So we'll finish chopping this up, and then we will join you back to get this salmon off the grill and have our salad complete.
After completing my contract, I still have to buy out of it? Come on. Here's your sign.
Switch to the sign that's keeping home secure and customers happy all over the area. Security from Star Communications. We pride ourselves on fair pricing and quick, friendly service every time.
Somebody try to break into this place?
Security from Star Communications.
Smelling good in here. Everything's looking really good. You can see how beautiful the salad already looks with all of these colors. We actually need to go ahead and pull off our little piece of salmon. So if you look right here, you can actually see some of the white. That is the fat, but it's healthy fat. So with our fish, we actually have really good omega-3s in there, which give us that healthy fat that is so good for our body. And you want to consume that at least 1 to 2 times a week. You can see with this other piece of salmon, this is still a little raw at the top. I'm going to give it just a few more minutes, and then this one should be finished as well. But another tip for you is also using a thermometer. And y'all are probably sick of me talking about this because every show I talk about that digital thermometer, but it really does make a difference. Salmon is not good if it's overcooked, and it can happen very, very quickly. So with your salmon, you want to always cook it to 145 degrees, and you stick it into that thickest part, and you just let it sit. We're at 150 already, so we are good to go. And another way you can tell with fish is just if it flakes. So if you grab a fork, you can tell if it just kind of flakes apart. And you can just see that flaking really nicely. So it looks good. This one's done. That one still needs another minute or two, and then it will be complete. So we're gonna let that finish up. And the last thing that we need for our salad is gonna be our dressing. So this is very simple. It's just a little bit of balsamic vinegar. Now I have a fancy balsamic vinegar that we had in our pantry here at the extension office from a trip our FNEP team had done to Taste the Olive in Wilmington. There's tons of stores that have this fancier balsamic vinegar. I know there's a place in Kinston as well, but this is a black currant aged balsamic vinegar, and it tastes very sweet, but there is no sugar in it. So this has 2 grams of added sugar, but the ingredients don't have any sugar in it. So that is hopefully natural sugar. We are gonna add 2 tablespoons. You can do any balsamic vinegar here, just plain is fine. And you can add anything to this salad as well. So I just do a few tablespoons. And then the last thing that we're gonna add is just some fresh black pepper. And you can adjust this to taste if you're a pepper person. Keep going. You can wait and let everybody do that individually. And then you just give it a good toss, and it will be all mixed in and complete. You could absolutely not dress this until you serve it at the table. People could put their own dressing. Other great things that would be really good in this would be something like avocado. You could add more corn. You could add, more bell pepper. So there's some other things that you could also throw in there to give it some extra flavor if you choose. I think it's so good just the way it is. It doesn't really need anything else. All right, so that is complete. And our salmon should be almost done. Made a little bit of a mess there, but that's all right. So let's peek at that. It's so close. But it still looks like it might need 1 more minute. And another thing about fish is you always want to keep it on that scale side down and keep it there. So we don't flip our salmon, you just put it on scale side and then you let it cook like that for the remainder of the time. So this one it's almost done. I can actually start seeing some of that fat coming out of it, but it's almost complete. Super easy. I mean, this takes about, like I said, 8 minutes, 6 to 8 minutes, depending on the thickness of your salmon, and then it's finished. So if you're looking for a quick, easy recipe to go, easy meat to go with your meal, you could absolutely do salmon. You could do shrimp on this. You could do chicken. I love to load up the grill during the summertime and go ahead and make some salmon for the week because it's so tasty. So definitely look into that, grab you some salmon, make this delicious, healthy salad, and we promise you will love it this summer.